Ministry tries to downplay expose on missing 5 billion shillings. Kaiseri and Nelson Maro to be sued for theft after destroying ship allegedly carrying heroin. Class relatives view bodies of victim after Mandera Al-Shabaab attack.
I was forced to drop from school because each and every time I could get those writing from a group of people, fellow students are asking, we want to check who you are. Did your mother check on you well? Did your mother confirm whether you were a girl or you are a boy?
And we are people too. What's our gender? Intersex Kenyans hold protests in Nairobi. Welcome to the broadcast. Our sign language interpreter at the bottom end of your screen is Meresha Owiti. We begin with the latest in what might be the newest and biggest graft scandal in the Jubilee administration. The Ministry of Health has admitted that an interim audit exposed what appeared to be the loss of at least 5 billion shillings in the ministry, but was quick to say that those who are being audited have not been given a chance to explain where the funds went. The Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Cleopa Milo, has said a final audit of financial reports is being done and the outcome will be made public. Milo sent a statement to newsrooms as angry Kenyans turned to social media to castigate the Health Principal Secretary, Dr. Nicholas Muraguri, who was quoted in a local daily newspaper threatening a Nation Media Group writer over the expose. KTN News Associate Editor Noah Tiono joins me to paint a picture of what this means. Noah, good evening.
Good evening, Ben. The Health Cabinet Secretary says Kenyans have no need to be excited over this because, according to him, it is an interim audit report. But experts I've spoken to today tell me that Kenyans rarely ever get to see the so-called final audit reports because those who have the power to sit on them actually sit on them when they come out. So this is the stage at which Kenyans actually should be getting excited. And this is just part of what that interim audit report was revealing today. They're saying that at least 2.5 billion shillings has been marked as over expenditure. This, according to the audit, interim audit that we have seen, and also according to the expert I've spoken to, this is how those who are corrupt in ministries hide what has been stolen in the ministries. They say this is over expenditure, meaning that this is money they spent over and above what they were permitted to spend. So the auditor raises queries there. Another one is in the National AIDS Control Program, where they say that at least 516 million shillings is missing, Ben, or at least misused or misappropriated. Also, they are talking about questionable construction of over 350 million shillings that in the health ministry people are saying they spent this in construction, but they're not seeing the buildings themselves. Also quoted as over expenditure at the Kenya Medical Training Colleges is 269 million shillings, Ben. This, like I said, is rated as over expenditure or money spent without authority from the government or the law. Also, money allegedly used to purchase portable or mobile clinics, if you wish, to support the maternity program under the Jubilee administration also is questionable there. But what is the Cabinet Secretary saying? The Cabinet Secretary is saying Kenyans need not get excited over this money because the audit report was leaked before those who are being audited could explain where the money went. That is what the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Cleopa Milo, was telling us today. He's also saying that the Kenya National Audit Office is already auditing the final financial report of the various departments of the Health Ministry, and Kenyans will get to see the final audit report. But, as I said, experts are saying don't even hold your breath because that final audit report, Kenyans rarely ever see it. The Cabinet Secretary is also saying that they will communicate to the country the final outcome of the audit queries. And as I said, people are saying, don't hold your breath over that. But this is where the juice is for today. Now, after the expose last night on one of Kenya's national television stations, the PS Health Ministry was quoted as saying to the writer who was querying the missing billions, telling to the writer, look, you don't know how the government works, you know. So we can spy on you. We know the amount of money you have in your account. So don't ask me about the missing billions. You could not explain where the billions went, by the way. But the Kenya Union of Journalists is really, really angry at that kind of response. They're saying the PS should actually step down and be prosecuted over those threats and remarks. But this is what the PS was quoted as saying to the writer. The writer called the PS to find out, look, Mr. PS, you are the accounting officer in the ministry. This money, almost 5 billion Kenyan taxpayers' money missing in under your docket. What do you have to say? And the PS is quoted as saying, you don't know how the government works. If there is need to hack into nation systems, we can do it. We can find out what you are writing. We can stop it right there. We know the amount of money you have in your account. And the PS is also quoting us saying us, if we decide to spy on the entire media house that you work for, we can do it, and we know what you're writing. We know what everybody else is writing over there. And KUJ is saying this is in fact against the law. And Kenyans on social media today were very, very angry at this. They're saying, who does this person think he is? This is a new country under a new constitution, and we can't sit and stomach all of this ban. This is why Muraguri is in trouble.
Interesting, Noah. And this looks similar to the NYS saga, only 5 times bigger. And the CS then, Anne Waiguru, was said to be the one who should be, where the buck should stop. Interesting to see where this will head.
My thoughts exactly, Ben. You almost said exactly what I was thinking, because when it was Waiguru's turn at the devolution ministry in the NYS saga, people were saying the buck stops with the cabinet secretary. But this time around, curiously, everybody wants Muraguri to shoulder the burden. Yes. Why isn't the cabinet secretary, Cleopa Mailu, shouldering the burden? Why is it that now the buck stops with the PS? Why is it that the buck does not stop at the CS's office? Whether there's politics in this matter, Ben, we are yet to see.
All right. Thanks, Noah. Of course, it is a story we are keeping an eye on, and that is the basis of our big question discussion tonight. And we are asking you, should Principal Secretary Muraguri resign for threatening a journalist over the lost health billions? Should the PS Nicholas Muraguri resign for threatening a journalist over the lost health billions? Tell us what you think about this developing story. SMS your yes or no response plus a brief comment to 22155. That is, as always, our SMS line. You can also tweet us. Join this discussion. It has been hot all day on social media platforms. Join it on Twitter. You can tweet me at Ben_Kitili, at KTN News, at KTN Kenya. The hashtag is KTN Prime. We shall be sampling some of those texts as well as tweets during this live newscast. It is a big story. Of course, we will continue to keep an eye on it. To see what the reaction from the Ministry of Health. Of course, we shall be seeking to talk to Dr. Cleopa Mailu, and we are seeking here on the broadcast to just shed some more lights on those numbers and what that means and where next for Kenyans. Have Kenyans actually lost 5 billion Kenya shillings? That is what we will seek to find out. So tell us what you think. SMS 22155 is our SMS line. Now joining me is Michael Oro, Programs Manager, Social Institute for Development, to just try and make Kenyans understand what is going on here. Thank you, sir, for joining us on KTN Prime.
Thank you.
Now, this is an interim audit. Please explain to us what this means. Are we talking about real money that Kenyans have lost, or is the backlash premature?
Great question. I think it cannot be premature in the sense that, and I think what the Cabinet Secretary has said is probably consistent with what happens in an audit. So it's an interim audit. Whenever there's an audit, the formalities is that there would be audit queries that are sent to the particular institution or body that is being audited, after which they are expected to be given an opportunity to respond to the audit queries. Not all audit queries necessarily indicate money has been lost or misappropriated. On the question of whether we are, or Kenyans are overreacting, I do not think that there's a justification to the statement of overreaction. I think we've been treated to a significant amount of corruption scandals. To be honest, I think it's an hemorrhage, kind of, and almost to a level of corruption, constipation, if you may. It's almost lost the possibility of loss of money, the possibility of extent of corruption in government. And we are talking not just, it's almost state-sponsored corruption, or state-tolerated, or state-facilitated corruption. We've seen an upsurge of this kind of instances.
Right.
And I think you mentioned during the news bulletin that this is almost 5 times NYS. And I think I need to rectify that. To be honest, NYS, what we have in the collective memory as a nation is about 791 million. That drove then CS Waiguru home. Right. But what most people don't know is that since the 791, which was the poster child of NYS, increasing revelations indicate that the NYS loot is much bigger than the 791 billion.
All right. Top on the list of these fraudulent transactions is the diversion of 889 million shillings meant for free maternity care. 515 million meant for the AIDS control program was diverted. First of all, this is mind-boggling. There's also 800 million worth of transactions for portable clinics that were never delivered. IFMIS has been touted. It was also mentioned during the NYS saga. Wasn't it supposed to be sealing such loopholes in the first place, IFMIS?
IFMIS is a great system. I'm not an expert, I would say, but I think when you speak to people who understand it, generally they would tell you the system there has to be human agency to compromise it. There has to be a willingness and an intentionality to compromise the security systems of IFMIS. But I also think that we need to remember that technology is great as an agency in fighting corruption or reducing the instances of lack of integrity in our public management, procurement systems. But technology in itself, without a human agency and a national culture that fights impunity and corruption, it can actually turn out into be the worst thing that could ever happen to a community of people. Technology can be hacked, technology can be compromised, technology in the wrong hands, in the hands of people without integrity, does not guarantee the fight against corruption will succeed. So we have to celebrate IFMIS. I think it's a great system. It was supposed to cure significant issues around corruption and loss of public funds. For it to succeed in its initial mission, we must also ensure that people who interact with IFMIS are persons of integrity. Right. And that is where accountability comes in.
Exactly. The audit report quotes 1.08 billion being over expenditure and 2.4 billion, half of the 5 billion being illegal over expenditure. Now, what is over expenditure and what is illegal over expenditure?
I think typically in budget management or budget owners, if you are a budget owner, you know, a budget guides expenditure. Yes. It's what you have versus what you need to do. So you say, over this year we are going to spend X amount of money. It's not an exact science as per se, you know, and you would expect that in a space like a Ministry of Health, maybe there could be unforeseen circumstances in any situation. So you could have justifiable over expenditures, and which you can say, okay, can we move, shift a little bit of resources, given whether it's a national emergency, do we have a legitimate case to shift certain resources?
That is an okay over expenditure.
And those are the kind of expenditures that an audit query, when the auditor now gets the feedback, they are able to explain.
Final question for you. The audit report has touched on several different money baskets in the Ministry of Health. There is AIDS control, KMTC, KEMSA. Now, if heads were to roll, who should be the first to go? Where should the buck stop here?
It's an important question, but I think I would want to enrich it a little bit.
All right.
If you allow me.
Very quickly.
It's not heads will roll, heads roll. We have a history of heads rolling. What we are discovering increasingly is shuffling the same criminal elements within the architecture of corruption. I would care less, and I think the principal secretary needs to be prosecuted like expressly for just a threat to a journalist who is doing his work. That's completely an obstruction of justice issue, and it should be pursued in its own independent without even the report. But I think as heads roll, it's important to know where they are rolling towards.
All right.
The president was kind enough to release a couple of prisoners in the hope that we would create space in our jails for these economic criminals.
All right.
And I'm hoping that they will not roll into new parastatal jobs. They will not roll into new state institutions. They will not roll even into private sector, but they will roll actually find
Good
their way
points.
into jail.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
George Michael Ora, Program Manager, the Social Institute of
Society for International
International Development, just shedding some more light on just what is happening, making Kenyans understand what this means about this new leaked internal audit report at the Ministry of Health. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Switching gears, a magistrate has today withdrawn from a 22 million shilling narcotics case in Mombasa, citing government interference in the trial of a Sisholoa and 4 Kenyans charged with trading in heroin. Chief Magistrate Julius Nange abandoned the case, saying he could no longer entertain state interference in the trial following the August 14, 2015 state-sanctioned destruction of the yacht on which the suspects were allegedly arrested and in which the police claim heroin was found. Nange said the state had trampled the principle of rule of law by not respecting courts. Defense lawyer Jared Magolo announced that he will institute theft proceedings against Interior Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri, head of Kenya's military Samson Mwathete, and PS Monica Juma, Coast Regional Commissioner Nelson Marwa, and others who presided at the destruction of the boat owned by a British tycoon. On August 13 last year, Nkaiseri flew to the port city of Mombasa to supervise the ship's destruction and proclaimed the action was the state's determination to eliminate narcotics trade through Kenya. Right, now, of course, let's go to another story, interesting story here. Kenya, for the first time today, commemorated the International Intersex Awareness Day. A group of intersex persons led by Gram Africa Foundation made a procession to Parliament in a walk dubbed Let Me Be Me, where they presented a petition seeking to have the intersex community recognized as a third gender. Nominated Member of Parliament Isaac Mwaura, who also chairs the Special Persons Committee, said efforts are being made to have the intersex recognized within Kenyan policies. KTN's Michelle Ngel in our report.
Is it a boy or a girl? It's the first question many new and expectant parents hear from their families, friends and co-workers, and many times it is one or the other. But what about intersex children? Children who have chromosomes or hormones, or in some cases genitals that don't fit typical definitions of male or female. Under the theme, Let Me Be Me, Kenya for the first time commemorated the Intersex Awareness Day, celebrated on the 26th of October, seeking to create awareness on a community often stigmatized for its gender ambiguity.
Before the end of the year, we shall have made the necessary legislative changes to ensure that we will stop talking about human beings as either being male or female. But we will progress this country to ensure that we will recognize all human beings in whatever form they present themselves.
The intersex community in Kenya has come a long way in being recognized by the Kenyan law. In August this year, nominated Member of Parliament Isaac Mwaura presented a petition to Parliament seeking to have the intersex community recognized as the third gender.
Each and every day, new people are coming out to declare that indeed they are intersex persons. We are calling upon the government to actually recognize that there is a third gender. There is a third gender called intersex. And that is a reality. That is a reality. This is not about people who want to transform their bodies from male to female. These are people who are born like that.
Often seen as a curse that needs to be normalized, doctors perform normalizing surgeries on intersex babies who are yet to show their gender preference. This normalizing surgery is known as infant genital mutilation and involves the removal of either one of the intersex genitalia. Such procedures mark the beginning of discrimination for intersex children who are deprived of the right to choose a gender they identify with. John Njae, whose son was born intersex, was advised by doctors to take him for surgery where the female genitalia was removed. But as he narrates, that was the beginning of the problems.
Clinics miaka mingi sana. Kwa sababu tumeanza ukiwa na miaka 9. Miezi 9. Sasa amefanyiwa operation nyingine. Na hiyo operation alifanyiwa ilikuwa sasa ya reconstruct ile kitu ilikuwa imetengenezwa vibaya. Sasa bado hiyo shida bado iko hiyo mkojo.
Most intersex persons also grow up to identify with a different gender to the one that doctors and parents were inclined to, as were the cases of Ryan and Sydney, who were both socialized as girls but later realized that they were male.
My names are Ryan Muirure, although on my ID I'm Ruth Wangui. I was born brought up as a girl until when I get the age of between 14 to 15, when my body started changing, when I could find that each and everyone is asking, oh, you thought we are Ruth, but you are not. So I was forced to drop from school, because each and every time I could get those writing from a group of people, fellow students are asking, we want to check who you are. Did your mother check on you well? Did your mother confirm whether you were a girl or you were a boy? So I was confused where to fit. Even if I was bright enough to continue on my studies, I believe I was, but I didn't even get a chance.
Mimi nilelewa kama msichana, lakini kufika 13 years, nikaanza kufeel I'm not the way they thought. So I started transitioning. Nikajifeel mimi ni mwanaume. So vile wakati niliwaambia vile nahisi ndio ileta shida. Kafukuzwa nyumbani. Nikaambiwa nitafute mahali pengine mahali naweza ishi. So nikakuja Nairobi and I started my life. Even they tried to kill me, but I escaped. So I survived that.
Moving forward, our birth certificates should say you are either male, you are either female or other.
And we will also draft a legislation, an intersex persons bill, which then will address all the rights and privileges of intersex persons in this country. Now, the judiciary has actually pronounced itself on this matter. Parliament, we are working on this issue. It is the executive where the problem is.
Yes.
That is where the challenge is. They are not giving our people IDs.
Child Rights International Network conservatively estimates that there are 20,000 intersex people in Kenya who are not looking to be fixed but to be recognized as the third gender. Michelle Ngele, KTN News.
Now, hours after a terror attack that claimed the lives of 12 people at a residential complex in the town of Mandera, the families of those affected made their way to the Chiromo mortuary here in Nairobi to identify the bodies of the deceased. Timothy Atieno was with them and has the details.
The Chiromo mortuary was a buzz of activities, gathering friends and family of 11 of the slain individuals, hoping to set their eyes on the bodies of their kin. The reality of Tuesday morning's attack, too profound for most here, who first had to undergo psychosocial therapy sessions before being allowed into the morgue. And at 11 a.m. Kenyan time, they all gathered at the mortuary's entrance, eager to go in, but perhaps not ready for what they were about to see. Moments later, and one by one, they exited the building. Asba Leon lost not one, but two of his close friends, Kennedy Kinyanjui and 18-year-old Lisa Achieng, who were thespians visiting Mandera in school tours to perform set book plays.
The people I hold responsible, these people, the Al-Shabaab, and whoever was concerned, only two messages for you. If God lives, of which I believe he does, God will pass his judgment on you severely if you can afford to kill our last born, the young one, and our friend, our good friend Lisa. God will pass his judgment on you. Two words, judgment is upon you.
Young Lisa's father, shocked by the loss of his daughter, was shot dead at the Bisharo guest house in Mandera when the militants attacked.
It is so painful. And a young lady, a talented lady, I have nothing to say more than that. The government has to take the responsibility because these are peace-loving citizens. These are citizens of Kenya. They love their country, and that's why they work anywhere within the boundary of Kenya.
The Tuesday morning attack that saw 12 dead and several others injured had some 9 survivors airlifted to Nairobi for treatment.
We received them last night. They've been hospitalized at Jomo Kenyatta. No, not Jomo Kenyatta, but the Kenyatta National Hospital. So they are doing well. They are out of danger.
But for most of those gathered here, questions as to what steps were being taken by the government to nab the masterminds of the attack dominated the discussions.
We really feel the pain. We need the government to do something because it's not the first time Mandera has been attacked.
Mr. President, Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, I'm sure you'll be watching this. Kindly, sir, take whatever action there is to safeguard our people in Mandera. There are teachers working there, non-locals, their life at risk.
So far, no suspects have been brought to book over the incident, even as security apparatus remained tight-lipped on the progress of investigations into the attack, the third one within the county of Mandera in just 4 weeks. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Painful story there indeed. Now, before we take a quick commercial break, our top story where what might be the newest and biggest graft scandal in the Jubilee administration, where the Minister of Health admits that an internal audit report might have exposed the loss of at least 5 billion Kenya shillings. That led to an altercation between a newspaper journalist and the PS, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Health, that is Nicholas Muraguri. On our big question discussion, we are asking you, should PS Muraguri resign for threatening a writer over the loss of health billions? Keep sending your texts and tweets. 22155 is our SMS line, at Ben_Kitili on Twitter, at KTN News, at KTN Kenya. The hashtag is KTN Prime. KTN Prime. Now, she was 10 years old when she first got pregnant. A year later, she was married off to a man 5 times her age at a life-changing cost, having to undergo the cut after she had given birth. This is Christine's story, a story of survival and strong resolve as a mother to shield her daughters from a similar fate.
Ninaitwa Christine. Sasili nilikuwa mtoto, nilikuwa nimeelewa. Nikazaa hiyo mtoto ya kwanza. Mwili yangu ikakaa si mzuri, ikakaa mbaya.
Christine was only 10 years old when she had her first pregnancy. She labored at home and gave birth to a daughter traditionally. Her baby's father was a 17-year-old boy living in a Ugandan village that borders Pokot, and despite his ardent promises of marrying her,
alisema si mtoto yangu.
A year later, a man 5 times her age asked for her hand in marriage. She would be his third wife. Against her will, her parents gave her away, the fate of many girls here.
Akalazimishwa. Akapea mimi mzee.
But one problem haunted Christine at the onset of her union.
Kama hujakata ukamii ng'ombe ya mtu.
She had to endure the cut for her marriage to survive, and even before that she was subjected to certain tests.
Tunaanzia meno aende kwanza. Nakata sasa huku kwanza huku. Sasa mtu anasema wewe unakubali kwa sababu umeweza hii.
She tells of the painful experience that changed her life completely. When she bled heavily, she was urged to drink goat's blood to save her life. There were hardly any rescue centers for her to run to.
Female genital mutilation may be denounced in public, but practiced in private. The county of West Pokot is characterized by dense thickets, but it's not just the dense green vegetation. There's also the mountains that envelops this entire county, and that very beauty is the same one that hides the beast that is FGM.
Nilipata shida. Ile mtoto atoki mzuri, saa zile unasaa.
Now, the mother of 4 has resigned to her fate. We met her husband of 7 years earlier before she began to tell us her story. He wouldn't speak to us on camera. She tells us he treats her well. Her only worry is that her eldest daughter struggles to fit in. She has not yet been enrolled at school. The older she grows, the more likely she will get cut.
Mpeleka shule nasar nalipa mtihani ni 20 bure. Yeye anasema mistaki hata 20 yangu aende. Wacha hiyo mtoto akae nyumbani.
Even if she tries to stop it from happening to her, it won't be enough. She sought intervention from the Komesi Women Network supported by Action Aid in West Pokot. She strongly believes that a boarding school with less peer pressure is the best solution. Her resolve as a survivor to save other girls remains. Kaswangira, KTN News, West Pokot County.
Tweet of the day in association with LDK Extraordinary Brandy.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Before we take a look at what's happening in the world of business, let's give you an update. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission conducted 4 by-elections in 4 wards: Nyacheki Ward in Kisii County, Sala Ward in the county of Tana River, Mosiro Ward in the county of Kajiado, and Kalokol Ward in the county of Turkana. We have provisional results from Kalokol in Turkana, that is in Lodwar. The final tally, that is in Lodwar, which had 4 candidates. Joseph Amuria of ODM seems to have clinched that seat with 1,715 votes. Simon Angiro of Jubilee Party is second with 1,336 votes. Lotengan Peter, an independent candidate, has 101 votes. And Michael Epem of Ford Kenya has 74 votes. Those are provisional results. The IBC is yet to announce him the winner, but Josephat Amuria of ODM seems to have clinched that particular seat with 1,715 votes. That is Kalokol Ward in Lodwar in the county of Turkana. The IBC is saying that provisional results from Mosiro Ward in the county of Kajiado might be delayed because of poor or no GSM network. We shall be giving you the latest as soon as we get it here on KTN News. Now, in business, Kenya has climbed 21 places to 92nd, up from 113th last year in the World Bank's Doing Business 2017 report released today, retaining the rank of the 3rd most reformed country in the world and top in Africa. Kenya has, with this result, attained a record 44 places jump in 2 years, return to clinch Africa's top reformer slot and break into the double-digit zone for the first time since 2009. The report indicates that Kenya has implemented regulatory reforms in 5 indicators aimed at making it easier for local entrepreneurs to do business in the country. In 2016-2017, amongst the highest reforms by any country.
The non-resource-rich countries, which include Kenya, continue to register very respectable economic growth compared to the resource-rich countries, and that is just because of what is happening globally in terms of commodity prices. So most of the non-resource-rich countries have benefited from the decline in commodity prices, and Kenya has been a beneficiary.
From the actual overall ranking, the IFC and the World Bank Group normally recognize the top 10 countries in the world that have registered the highest amount of reforms. And as I mentioned, both last year and this year, we have been recognized. And even more interesting, last year there were a number of African countries on the continent who are on that list. And this year, Kenya is the only country that has made to that list as a top 10 performer.
Kenya Electricity Generating Company, KTN, will enhance its strategy to diversify revenue streams, given its overall revenue drop of 27 billion shillings compared to last year due to computation of tax that was owed to government. The tax loss stemming from debts owed in heavy investments saw the power producer fail to pay out dividends this year. But John Mudane, who is the finance director at KTN, maintains that the cash issues have been cleared and that the dividend policy remains unchanged. Total non-electrical revenue income stands at 9 billion shillings, a 48% increase from last year's results. With financing from government, public-private partnerships and capital markets, KTN cites plans to invest more in drilling services and steam power so as to drive growth in revenue from various other sources.
We did make close to 1.5 billion revenues from just drilling. This year, we've already gotten into some contracts also drilling. I may not be able to give you the exact figure, but what I can tell you is that as the developers of those power plants prepare themselves to get the financing that they need, then we'll be able to start and to commence doing this. But what is for sure is that we expect to see revenues increasing from this source.
Kenya needs to come up with an agricultural policy that will address poor handling of goods, poor harvesting, limited access to finance by farmers, poor infrastructure in a bid to curb post-harvest loss. Data from Rockefeller Foundation states that every year 1/3 of all food produced for human consumption, equivalent to 1.3 billion tons, is lost before it reaches retailers, with 40% thrown away, reducing 15% of farmers' income. As a result, yield-wise, Rockefeller's $130 million initiative is set to work with private, public and non-profit actors in the food supply system to cut food loss. Having food loss and waste is part of the Sustainable Development Agenda. African heads of state have also committed their respective governments to halve the current level of post-harvest losses by 2050 as part of the 2014 Malabo Declaration.
We are trying to demonstrate that this can be reduced post-harvest loss in 3 value chains that are representative really of the different crop categories. We're working in Kenya here in the mango value chain, because mango is a very important crop in Kenya here. And we're working also in the tomato value chain in Nigeria, and we're working in the maize value chain in Tanzania.
And that's where we leave it on KTN Business and on the news as well. This being Wednesday, we leave with sports. Before we do that, on our big question, very quickly, we did ask you, should Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Nicholas Moraguri, resign for threatening a journalist over the loss of health? Kibeta Rapyegon says, yes, he should have resigned like yesterday. Joshua says, George Makori says, not even resign, the fellow should rot in jail. Maggie on Twitter says he should resign for participating in covering corruption, let alone threatening. Caleb Majiwa thinks differently, says no, he shouldn't. Anger, frustration got the better of the CS, and it's unfortunate that he threatened the journalist. Grace Mugambi says, big shame, stealing from the sick and dying without any remorse. We must demand for accountability. Matthew Senior says on Twitter, I sympathize with the health sector because someone gets wealth elsewhere. Finally, one here from Collins Arapet says, resign, he should be stoned by at least 2 million Nairobians. What a shame. Many thanks for participating in our big question discussion, for watching KTN Prime tonight. I leave you with Moses Wahisi will be here with you shortly with the latest from the world of sport. I'm Ben Kitili. Thanks for watching. Good night from Nairobi.
Now, when we talk about talent in the Kenya Premier League, one player, and that is Eric Marcelo, comes into the mind. People have been calling him one of the best when it comes to matters of defending, and also when it comes to matters of attacking, he's also rated among the best in the Kenya Premier League. He has played for the club and he's also played for the country, but people are still wondering exactly who's this young and also talented player. Abul Ahmed sought out and he gives us the much needed answers.
A couple of years ago, Eric Marcelo Ouma was playing for Kakamega High in the Airtel Rising Stars tournament, and after an impressive performance in the school games, which saw him named the best player in 2014 and one of the outstanding players the following year, the most successful club in Kenya, Gor Mahia, came calling.
Tangu upate namba, lazima ukuwe umewaka. Na pia mpira pia si rahisi. Juu lazima utie bidii. Kwa nimezoea hiyo pressure na nilijua huko pia naweza, juu hakuna kitu ngumu kwa maisha.
Since then, he's never looked back. Marcelo immediately cemented his place in Gor Mahia's first 11, getting the nod ahead of Abuba Sibomana, who had a wonderful 2015 season. It did not take long before he got a call-up to the national team Harambee Stars, in which he has thrived since.
Juu pia caps pia ni muhimu. Na pia kuitwa huko, hiyo inaonyesha ulikuwa umewakad na ulikuwa determined. So juu pia huko pia siku rahisi ni kuenda na kung'ang'ania namba.
The 20-year-old is also a first-year student at the Technical University of Kenya.
Hii mpira huwezi jua. Juu mpira pia nakuwa na some challenges. So pia si long term. Huwezi cheza mpira forever. But unaweza soma hata kwa kuna 70 years. So hiyo unafuangalia life after football.
The young left back, who can also play as a left winger, is regarded as one of the best upcoming players in Kenya and was being tracked by several clubs both locally and abroad until he extended his contract with the Green Army. Abula Ahmed, KTN Sports.
And now to the Under-23 Volleyball African Nation Championships, where one team, Egypt, yet to lose a single match again. Today they were on a winning spree, getting an important 3-0 victory against Senegal in a set of 25-15, 25-6, and also 25-16. Another team that has also been impressive is Rwanda. Again today, 3-0 victors against Botswana in sets of 25-16, 25-19 and 25-17. Kenya is another side that is going to be in action tomorrow, and that is against Botswana. And remember, Kenya in their opening ties were able to get a 3-0 victory against Senegal, but against Egypt it was a tall order because Egypt secured an important 3-1 victory against Kenya. And different tie, Botswana is also going to be playing against Egypt in another tie that is scheduled for tomorrow. So for the Kenyan side, remember, playing against Rwanda, and Rwanda is a side that is coached by our very own Paul Bitok, so it won't be an easy affair as the Kenyan queens of the Under-23 volleyball set out at least to secure an important victory against Rwanda and most probably finish as runners-up in this edition of the African Under-23 Nation Championships. Tonight in matters to do with the English Football League, Manchester is going to be divided because Manchester United is going to be hosting Manchester City in another derby that any side but much needed Manchester United will be trying to get some much needed points and actually secure some wins after some disparaging performance in the few weeks. And with that, we do wind up for today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Have a lovely night.